announcement. No chatbots were harmed in the making of this podcast.
You're listening to Frank Talk, the no-holds-barred conversation about leadership with Dr. Cheryl Frankeny. Real talk, smart insight, and helping leaders get ahead by staying ahead. Now here's your host, Cheryl Frankeny.
Why don't we kind of move into then what you do need to be concerned about? Because there's a lot of exciting stuff. There's a lot of great things happening. And I'm sure almost every organization can give some great examples, but there are going to be some scary examples too. But here's what I'd like to talk about. There are really just a couple of things that you need to be hyper aware of to give you what I would call healthy skepticism, right? So unhealthy skepticism is, can't stand it. I'm just walking away from it, never going to use it. Well, then it's going to literally pass you by because it's moving at lightning speed. But let's go back here. Let's talk just briefly, Joe. Let's talk a little bit about the ROI reality check, because I think you gave a couple good examples as we were preparing for this episode. I think the MIT example was a great one,
Well, MIT put out an article halfway through the year. Whether it's right or whether it was wrong, it
which
had
was
a
last year, right?
last halfway through
2025.
last year. That's right. It had a powerful impact on the way people thought because MIT came out and said, and it was late in the summer, that only 5% of the companies who've been investing in AI, and a lot of money was going into AI. A lot of people were spending money on AI. Only 5% were seeing any return on that investment. Now, people are saying, well, it takes longer than that, whatever. But it scared people. This is all I want to say. It scared people
Yeah.
because everyone's saying, let's spend money, let's spend money. We can fire all of our people and just have AI run everything. And there was this huge feeling of positivity. And then things started going poorly. We started realizing a lot of it is slop, a lot of it's not working, a lot of it's costing us money, not making us money. And so, except for those few companies that were doing it correctly, a lot of companies who were just gambling or letting IT run the company instead of the leaders really running the
Yeah.
company.
Too many
Uh,
regrets, basically.
right. And so that really deteriorated trust. And a lot of the projects that got started just got shut down. This is what MIT, there's a lot of other studies that said, not just MIT, although that's a big name to have a study out. But a lot of
Yeah,
other
so when
studies
they put
saying,
that study out, right, so those that were already skeptical or deniers, that's just giving them all the data they need to just say, "How about no? How about no?" Right, shut it down. But I think also it's gonna make it harder for the early adopters that maybe had a good ride and they
right.
have been careful. It's harder for them to prove their cases when there's now more skepticism than ever. So I do think this ROI reality check, but I have heard all this scuttlebutt, right, going around about is this going to be an, AI bust like the dot-com bust. I remember the dot-com bust, and I actually remember I was much younger at the time, and I remember thinking nobody's going to trust this. I mean, I don't think people are going to give out their credit cards. I wasn't even a part of this ball game in business at all, but I remember going, really? Because I won't. And I didn't. But I don't think it's going to be the same necessarily for AI, and it certainly hasn't been.
You're right. It is and it isn't. I think just like the dot com, we call it the dot com bust, but we have dot coms now. I mean, it
Right.
eventually did
It definitely did.
did
Not
what
long after. Not
right,
long
but
after.
not at the intensity and the amount of money that was being spent on it
Yeah.
in the early on in the '90s, which was too much money. It was a bubble that finally burst. People are saying that's what's happening with AI. I was out in Abilene, to see my uncle, that's my family's from. They're building billions of dollars OpenAI is spending to build a huge center. There's acres and acres, even on land my grandfather was on, just acres and acres of solar panels and
Yeah.
wind farms to try to
Yeah.
get enough electricity for this 1.2
And that's
gigawatt
one.
facility.
That's
That's just one
one.
facility, and they're wanting
Yeah.
to build many of these facilities. And they're saying they're gonna spend $500 billion over the next, 4 years to build all these centers. Where's this money coming from? They're getting investors. People are excited about it. Is it a bubble? Is it going to pop?
Yeah.
Some people are saying no. Some people are saying yes. But because people were worried, people started pulling out. So
Yeah.
there were people who did it right. There were people who did it wrong.
Well, and that's kind of where we are. But I think the second thing that is still a thing, I'm sorry, it
Right.
is a thing, and that is the reliability issue, the sycophancy, if you want to call it that
It
issue where AI,
hallucinates, whatever you want to
well, and it
call it.
wants to help.
If you tell AI, Here's my house. Here's a picture of my house, or here's my house listing. I think my house is worth 800,000, but what do you think? It'll If you overestimate it, it'll come back and say, "Yeah, you're probably right." If you underestimate it, it'll say, "Yeah, you're probably right." That's the problem. You and I were playing around with it, and I told it, "I have a business idea to make ice cream that tastes like fast food, like mustard and ketchup and
Mhm.
hamburgers," and
Just
it's this great
absolutely.
idea, phenomenal. This is the best idea. It's not.
Absolutely.
It's a stupid, mustard ice cream. That is not gonna sell. Hot dog flavored ice cream, that's not gonna sell.
Maybe
But
to a
whatever
few, but
you
I do mean a few.
it just tells you, "Yeah, you're great. Everything that you think is wonderful." And this is why people are getting in trouble because it wants you to keep clicking. It wants you to keep talking to it. It's a
Yeah,
chat. It's a
yeah,
chat bot. It
yeah.
wants to chat with you.
Well, and I know a lot of times, like when I'm working with, highly charged leaders, right? And sometimes you really do have to be highly charged. You've got a lot of stuff that you need to do. But these particular leaders, I'll often say, you just have to measure the collateral impact to these
Right.
decisions. Like, well, I've got to rattle these cages. I've got to get this done. Okay. Well, there is that which is acceptable depending on your and your company's risk tolerance. And then there's going to be that which isn't acceptable. I think your sommelier, example that you were talking about the other day,
Yeah,
well, because it did
seller.
work out, but maybe just briefly talk about that.
Yep, Seller Tracker apparently is an app that people are using now, but when they first tried to do it for the first 6 months, they were trying to use a chatbot, and it just would tell wine connoisseurs what they wanted. It would just tell them, "Oh, you'll love this wine. What about this one? Oh, you'll love it. What about this one? Oh, you'll love it." A
Mhm.
great sommelier is not gonna tell you love all wines. It was just too polite, too positive. And they should say, "Oh, you won't like this one," or, "Yes, you will like this one." That's what they wanted to do. Eventually, it got there, apparently. I'm not a wine connoisseur. I don't
Right.
use Cellar Tracker. They're not one of our sponsors. I don't know anything about them. But
Nope, nope,
apparently,
nope, nope.
for the first 6 months, they had to fight and fight and fight with the chatbots because they're too polite. They tell you what you wanna hear
Yeah.
instead of telling you what you need to hear. But they finally got there, and again, it's by tailoring it. Don't just use general stuff. Don't just go the easiest route. You've got to make sure you're using it the way it needs to be.
Well, and I think
Otherwise,
I
you're
think
gonna
this
get
is
that.
a good little segue here too. And Joe, I know he's looking down at his notes. I'm looking down at my notes. We're going to try to give you the references to the things that we're finding in the news and the media, et cetera, and our research.
I checked all
Um,
these references,
no, I know,
so
I'm sure you
they can
did.
check them too.
I'm sure you did. But I do want to, we do want to get at the truth. If at any point you know better than we do, don't hesitate, to make comments and don't hesitate to let us know, right, where we're wrong, because we definitely want to be right. But there are things that have gone wrong that could be very meaningful.
Mhm. Candomro spent 300,000, I'm sorry, $300,000 on a chatbot that could help their people go in and ask questions about their safety manual. So if you
Yeah.
have any questions about safety or procedures or company policies, but the after spending this 300,000, they said it couldn't even summarize a 100-page safety manual. It kept making up stuff. And we had the same problem when I uploaded all the rules to this game, and then I asked it questions about the game, and it kept just. I said, "What page is that on? I showed you the rules." It said, "Oh, my bad. Those were advanced rules." No, those are made up rules. You're
There
just
were.
going off the rail here. And I never could get it to just tell me what page. Don't just trust it. You can't just say, I'm sure it's right. You have to verify that. So that's become an issue,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
reliability issue.
Well, and I think if you are the thought leader and you are checking and you are double checking, I think that's why having experts in all the various fields and when you're pulling together the right steering team, right, in order to work with your organization in the key areas, they'll be the ones that have to check and recheck any AI involvement, no matter what function, for example, they might be in, or what piece of your business they might be in, because it's your experts that are going to know. Because I think the last and most important piece here is the accountability trap. And that is that don't think for half a minute that just because AI made a mistake, that you're off the hook if you were the one accountable for that decision. Right. And we've already talked about Air Canada. We've talked about the attorneys. We talked about,
Yeah, the courts have been very clear that if you're using it and it messes up, you messed up. But, even if the courts don't care, what about the public? The public doesn't forget.
Yeah.
like this Grok situation, when you're allowing your AI to make pictures of children, that's not something that's gonna get forgotten. Even if XAI and Elon Musk and they even if they've got it fixed by now, maybe it's already fixed,
Yeah.
but they're not the EU is already saying it, India, different countries saying, "I'm not sure we're gonna allow this in our countries because we just don't trust you, and you can't even
Yeah.
tell us exactly why this happened."
You
So
don't know why. I think
right.
that's the anxiety around it, but it doesn't mean that the battle's over across the board, and it doesn't mean that, again, that you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. But now I think what we've got to turn to is what do you need to do? What do you need to be aware of? How do you not just me telling you you need to be a thought leader, well, that's all great if you are one or if you know how to be one, but if you've never really thought through what you want to make sure you're doing as a thought leader, especially in the AI space, I wanted to make sure we leave you with a couple kind of practical tools. So let's kind of work through those. I know Joe in our work in industrial psychology, working with leaders, growth and development across many business, having critically minded leaders. I know there was even some research that we'd pulled on a few times when we were talking to executives about how critical being critically minded is. Let's talk a little bit about that and how it applies.
Yeah, you have to treat AI just like you would as you called it, a precocious 4-year-old, or like an intern who's just
A
really
brilliant.
doing or a new worker that's doing some brilliant work, but they make mistakes sometimes. You need to trust but verify. That's basic leadership 101, right? I mean, that's situational leadership. You can't just let the reins go and let AI run free. You've got to make sure you're verifying what it's saying is correct and that you can trust that it's gonna talk to your customers and not tell them something crazy.
Trust but verify, and I think what that really applies to, and maybe you've got the research on hand, but one of the things that is needed most in leadership across the board is being critically minded, right?
Yeah.
That's one of the things that top leaders have said they don't have enough of within their teams, within their organizations. And what they really mean by that is really thinking forward, backward, and concurrently all at one time, right? Really thinking about what decisions are about to be made, what's happened in the past, what's happening right now, what's AI doing, how is that going to impact the various outcomes that you're going for. You got to see it in your head. And if you can't see it in your head, then you're leaving too much to chance. You're gambling. I think the other little piece of advice, and that is we use AI to check AI.
You can do that. And I'm not an IT person. I'm not gonna try to there's a lot of people out there that can tell you more about how to do this, but one of the things we do is when you're in a conversation with one of the chatbots, the longer the conversation goes, sometimes the more confused the chatbot becomes, or there's so much information it can't process it all. Once it comes down with the conclusion and you think, okay, this is it. I like this. I like what it's saying here. I like to take that out and either put it into another chatbot and have them look at this phrase, tell me, what do you think? I'm a little concerned about this. I want to make sure, I like it, but I'm a little concerned. Or put it right back, start a new conversation in the same chatbot and put it in, start all over again and say,
Yeah.
what would you think about this phrase? Also, just getting it to quote sources.
Yeah. Or double check.
And that's something I noticed with Gemini, it's starting to do more automatically, is put the
Mhm,
sources on the left or have a little link to sources.
mhm.
Again, some of the sources I don't even trust because sometimes it's circular. Sometimes the sources were created by AI and then AI is quoting the sources. So if the source is crazystevewebsite.com, I hope that's not a real website, then you might say, I don't know about that one. If it's, something reputable, checking those sources,
Mhm.
trust but verify. Make sure it's correct and because it's on you. You're the one
Yeah.
responsible for it.
I think the next thing that I mentioned is how to master the prompt, but you mentioned sort of the situational leadership piece, right? Where you don't just and if you're familiar with situational leadership is but it basically
Mhm.
talks about 4 styles of leadership. You gotta be very directive, you gotta know what you're trying to tell someone about a very specific task. Then you gotta coach them and resource them, style 2. Style 3, you're being more participatory. Style 4, you delegate. Well, with AI, a lot of people say, "Well, I told it what to do, and then I let it go." That's called a style
Right.
1-4, and you're not staying involved enough. So talk a little bit about, mastering the prompt. Any
Well, the
other
thing is
advice about that?
yeah, the prompt, you have to ask it questions. That's called the prompt. Whenever you say, I want you to do this. I want you to create this for me. I want you to generate this for me. It's a prompt. And the prompt, there's a whole art to it. It's not just science. There's an art to these prompts because AI thinks a particular way and different AIs, different chatbots, and there's a bunch of different ones, they all think a little bit different. Some are more creative, some are more literal. And you've got to know how to ask the question. We're going to be up working in Alaska.
Alaska next week.
Yeah. And I was asking it, could you cross reference how full the moon's going to be with the weather so that maybe, I want to see the aurora. And but I didn't say in Fairbanks, and it said, "Well, in Houston, I don't think you're going to be." It knew I was in Houston, and it kept trying to tell me the weather in Houston, but I didn't say the prompt right, and so what
Right.
I got back out was garbage. And so I'm saying the prompt is very important. It's learning how to communicate, and that's something
Communicate.
I'm not gonna sit here and teach you to do because 'cause I'm still learning how to do. Sometimes you can ask AI itself, "How should I ask you to do this?" And it will tell
Yeah.
you the prompt.
Well, and
Or
isn't
or
that the definition of an LLM, right? Large language model. So it's based on language. So if you
Right.
don't
Oh,
know
right.
what you're saying, garbage in, garbage out kind of a problem.
Right. Right.
And I think the third piece then that I mentioned earlier that's also very critical, make sure whatever piece of the business that you're in, that you've got the vertical and lateral alignment. Put together a steering team of the key folks. I know as a consultant, when I go in to do a change project or and some of these have been, very high impact type projects, right? Where I had to have a steering team, but I only needed a few of the key representatives that would be co-accountable with me in relationship, because 'cause I'm not an IT expert, depending on the project. I'm, not a marketing expert, right? I'm not a but if you have those key people in the room that are gonna do the checking, double checking, trust and verification and steer it, then you'll be surprised at the lateral and vertical alignment that you can get very
Right.
quickly. And then you could actually, you'll be optimizing and developing and growing the business in a much bigger way than just the one piece that you thought was important, right? Don't just let IT or someone kind of take over and do it for you because you're going to end up being the one that's accountable. I actually think the soundbite that we captured from Sam at Cohere probably because he does this for a living, right? Going in, finding the right people to be working right in relationship to making AI real in the industrialization of AI within your business. And I think Sam actually put it really, really well. He does this for a living with Cohere, but working with an organization in relationship to how to harness AI and how to have the right people, that steering team, center of excellence, et cetera, in the room. Why don't we flip over to that clip?
So I think that the biggest one is really the continuity of commitment. And what I mean by that is if you're on an earnings call or you're talking at a board level, the executives are saying this is important and we have to do it. And if you're talking to the frontline workers, they're saying we want this technology to make our jobs easier, to make our lives easier. But the continuity between those two stakeholders isn't always there. And so one of the key things that we work with organizations on is partnering with a center of excellence. So having a central entity within the company that has that executive level sponsorship that can then partner with legal and compliance and security and then the lines of business to identify how we can deliver impact and then cascade that across the organization.
What I hear Sam saying is that there can't be a disconnect between you as the leader and the rest of the company. There are companies where they say we're not going to use chatbots, and yet your people are using chatbots, but just the leaders aren't. And then there are leaders who say, "I want you to use it for everything," like your colleague you were talking about. I want you to use it for every single thing you're doing, and the people don't like it. There's a disconnect. You need like Deep Brew at Starbucks. You need a process where everybody's on board, where the leaders and the people are all aligned.
So that you can predict the outcome by having the right people in the room to start with. And I think actually on the radical inquiry piece, which I love this last piece of this conversation, because I think, knowing exactly what to ask and who to ask is really half of the battle of being a critically minded thought leader. And we've got a soundbite from Tuba with Global Moo, which I think kind of wraps up what that really means, radical inquiry. So if you were going to give, like to other leaders of other industries, if you were going to give any advice as far as like kind of moving from where you moved into kind of ultimate leadership, anything you would share with them?
Um, yes, ask questions.
Ask a lot of questions.
Ask a lot of questions, and if you don't know something, just find a person who really knows it and have that person do what I think as a lead, it's the most important thing to find the perfect person to the perfect job.
Yeah, and what I really loved about that was I could tell by the look on her face, you can tell she's really learned to listen and to find the people that need to be in the conversation before decisions are made. While AI is helping, working, optimizing, it's not a here's the information, turn it over and delegate. It is literally a process. It's a critical minded partnership that can have wonderful outcomes if it's managed correctly.
It seemed like what a lot of the people were saying, that you interviewed was, "Don't stop being a leader just because you don't understand all there is to know about AI or coding or math. You're the leader. You have to be the leader. Make sure the right people are in place. Ask the questions." That's what I keep hearing in all these clips is, "You're the leader. Don't say, 'Well, I can't work in any of this because 'cause I'm not a IT person,' or don't say, 'Well, I'm just gonna turn this over to somebody else.'" Stay in there. Be the leader. Ask the questions.
Yeah, and to be honest, here's how I would wrap it up. Here's my 2 cents, as I like to put it, and that is you are the thought leader, be proud of it, and make sure those around you are being thought leaders also. AI is the most amazing enhancement tool, improvement tool, and efficiency tool that you can possibly imagine. I wouldn't let it go for anything, but I also wouldn't let it do just anything, right? So I think it's the process at play and you holding the reins, harnessing this incredible, powerful stallion, if you want to look at it that way. So when it comes to AI, don't be a denier. Don't ignore it. Don't be behind that 8 ball, right? But don't be so far ahead of that 8 ball that you're just gambling. You're just throwing the dice and hoping it lands. Because I can assure you that too many losses will lead to you losing. And I know that's not what you want. So be the thought leader that you want to be, harness AI, and, definitely let this conversation keep going because I can assure you this will not be our last hot topic episode that either relates or maybe directly continues to explore the AI evolution and the stunning and at times beautiful revolution.
And that's it for today's Frank Talk. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to subscribe for more straight shooting insights on what it takes to make an impact. We'll see you next time. Until then, stay sharp, stay honest, and keep it frank.